Peace, peace, peace. I just realized that I was going on for about a couple of minutes, and I realized I had tapped the screen and stopped the video. But um, I think where I left off was talking about how you know, this egotistical behavior and or abuse of power, how you know societally how this narrative of pushing conflict and growing up in conflict driven societies, environments, and so forth, and how that can be displayed even in communities. Um, Not how, people not wanting to interact, engage, so forth, because of so much programming around division, confusion, and fear, fear mongering when it comes to the programmings. Even on, when you look at these platforms, a lot of things when you're getting on there, so much of the corruption around the corruption around a lot of these social platforms, governmental structure. And that's what a lot of this Aquarian age or golden age is here to expose. And the polarity of it all is like being able to see how, when the energy played out from dark to light, is those things being brought to light to realize that we all have been affected by a conflict driven society. Your music, a lot of things that have kept people at a lower state, entertainment, a lot of things that kept people in this fantasy or this false uh, narrative or foundation, this illusion of power. So that's the opposite of what the divine or source is now implementing right now. The blueprint a lot of us at in facing and being on our healing journey or spiritual journey is the awareness around self-awareness around how we have nourished and kept the dysfunction going and will no longer in regards to the dysfunction, the imbalance, the conflict driven, relationships, the karmic cycles, and seeing how that now is ending because it begins and ends with us. So in accepting that is we're learning to feel safe and secure again within ourselves, because if you're in environments, and this goes for everybody, and you're talking about countries and you're talking about globally, where you're hearing about wars and you're just hearing about all these things that, again, even though if you don't see it on television, you're hearing it, or you're hearing someone talk about it, or you're seeing it displayed in, you're hearing all about these power struggles. It's always a narrative of this person versus this person, an immediate like separation or the illusion of separation or a division of, you and this person just because of what they look like, what they have, class, demographics. Oh, I'm in this class because, how much they make. All of this is meaningless, but it's to each his own, but it means a lot to certain people. But again, the programming and not seeing the conflict in that, because again, when you're talking about conflict driven society or just how the programming has affected us all, this has a lot to do with how immediately we disconnect from the innocence of ourselves or people, because and that immediately creates an inner, this from our own inner conflict, our own, inner critic and so forth. We as society or humanity or people have been so disconnected. And the reason I say that, from whatever God's source, from basically from our innocence in regards to that, it's like we all think that, or some people have believed that just because what this person has, what she doesn't have, then there's an immediately division within ourselves or them. Oh, they can't hang around me, they can't be around me if they don't do this. And so again, going back to the topic of speaking to the police, it's like just having, again, you're talking about, I'm in the process of like with my journey, from being in conflict driven to now progressing and evolving and rising into, how could I say this, harmonious and holistic exchanges or relationships. Um, divine love driven or authenticity, authentic driven partnerships, relationships, and meaning how that has to be established through being honest with self first, accepting versions of yourself, accepting the version of yourself that was a part of that conflict driven society. Accepting those versions of yourself up to this moment, grieving through that, going through all the emotions, the frustration, the anger, going through all those things to be where you are now and accepting that and being able to move forward no matter how other people will view you. It's the reestablishing the security within you. And I'm getting this visual right now. It's like, imagine a tree that hasn't been watered. See a visual of a tree inside of yourself. Like, literally close your eyes and see a tree within inside of yourself and look at that tree and see what that tree has been. See, no, like, imagine reaching into yourself and you're offering, through your actions and through whatever you're doing, you're offering fruit to people. And in that fruit, or you're offering seeds, let's say, from the fruit that you have produced, or you're just offering fruit and or seeds to people, or, planting seeds in connections or so forth. And in that exchange, there's an awareness around, like, okay, was that truly built off something where I was being honest with myself? And so reestablishing that security within self, or being secure, is knowing that in this inside of me, that tree that grows, or that seed, I am that seed that grows. Internally, I know that if I'm being honest with me and truthful and authentic, that I know whatever I give or offer to someone, in that I don't have to feel shame or guilt. I don't have to be indecisive. I'm giving from a loving, authentic, unconditional place. So the from experience a lot of programming, a lot of us have been giving from a place where our tree hasn't been watered, or we haven't had that reciprocity. Because if we have been in conflict driven societies or environments, then a lot of what we've been given never really watered us. Hmm. Or what we've been given to others from self-sacrificing the tree, that we need to water ourselves so we can expand, so we can branch out and offer a righteous fruit or something authentic, meaning that we don't have to question or doubt after we have given something, and question our sense of security or feeling safe and secure again. So in a way, we all, from being, whether you were in a conflict driven environment, in some way, some form, depending on what country you have been in, there's someone around you that have been affected by this. And what I mean by, and I mean like in a sense of verbally, physically, mentally abused, because not everyone, and I'm not here to categorize everyone to be and proclaim to be in these things. It's more so bringing the awareness around, again, how we all have been self-sacrificing ourselves for the happiness of a partner, our child, the environment that we want to be in, wearing this mask or wanting to show up as such. And in reality, we're not being real with ourselves first, or have not been real with ourselves. And then in that has affected the kids, and wondering why they feel so alone or feeling so neglected, because we have neglected ourselves. And who do you think has taught them that? Because whether we're unintentionally or intentionally aware of it, we were affected by people, parents, caregivers, whatever you want to call it, and society, who neglected us intentionally or unintentionally. And so in that abuse, in that abuse of power, it all comes back full circle to realize, for us to bring awareness to, like, hey, wow, I was a part of something that I will no longer be a part of. And I don't have to conform. So in that, you're choosing your power, me having to go through a part of learning my self-value is to know what it is to be devalued and to see how I devalued myself and to see how that reciprocation that I wasn't getting or receiving is because I did not pour into my tree. I did not pour into myself. And there's no one to blame. It's just I did not see that growing up. I did not know what that was. I didn't know how that looked. I didn't know how that felt. I didn't know how that tastes and so forth. And just me right now being in this environment, this is just even making this video, I gave myself this. I granted myself grace to go treat myself to, getting in a room or being with myself to be to able to wake up in peace in a sense of like knowing what it is to be with myself. And, a lot of things where we step out our comfort zone where we want to stay somewhere or be somewhere for periods of time, in reality, it's again, you're stepping out away only to step into yourself and to regain that sense of security and self-awareness, self-sufficiency, self-confidence, to rebrand your self-image. So again, a lot of these things that I've become aware of is from my own experience. Again, just we're in the process of, rebalancing things or balancing things out to where if the scale has been tipped to so much of seeing how the world has not been in balance, then now we're reestablishing that. A lot of us coming to your awakening, coming to your self-awareness of how you are a part of that. You carry that blueprint. So I can see how I'm being restored. I can see how I'm being rebirthed from my experience to now, going through a transition, going through all the emotions, going through realizing that the inner conflict, the burdens, and a lot of things that I was harboring because of what I've experienced and no longer being conflicted with it. We no longer have to be conflicted with the aspect of why we felt neglected or abandoned by our caregivers, by, whatever it is environment that you grew up in. And so in accepting that it's okay to grieve over that version of yourself that allowed those things to go on for so long. And then allowing, not that you have control over people, but allowing people to also grieve you, and accept that they no longer will get the same version of you because you're choosing to love yourself. You're choosing to love those aspects of yourself that you have neglected. They didn't neglect. You realize that as a reflection of you, they neglected those parts of themselves. And a lot of that has to do with what they've experienced in their environments or from their upbringing. And so a lot of which, what is happening is that we're being restored. And through that restoration, through that um, establishing that, and now returning to our roots and nourishing our roots, meaning ourselves, that comes with acknowledging and breaking generational chains and curses. Because the roots, meaning that, again, if you have that tree inside of you, that tree symbolizes not just a tree of life, but in a sense of like ancestrally, like the ancestral tree. Seeing why your fruit hasn't prospered, but you have been prospering. It's just the self-awareness around it. But seeing why your lineage hasn't prospered as it should, because a lot of what our mothers matriarchally and our fathers who played a role, they were in a lot of conflicted like environments, and then that led them to be conflicted with themselves, and that created chaos in the homes. That created a lot of confusion and division naturally between women and men, seeing themselves separate from each other. That created a lot of what you see now, like in the demographics or just all these titles of to divide people, to put them in a class or, or just anything to keep them in conflict, to keep them in some type of confusion or fear that they don't realize, like, wherever you are, you're prospering, you're progressing. And in the rim of that, that can look different for everyone. It's just accepting where you are, wherever you are, financially, mentally, emotionally, so forth, and not ever comparing that to anyone else's journey. So again, the effects of how this conflict driven society has affected us all, it's the unprogramming and realize that, oh shit, I too have been affected by this. But that's again where you haven't also been in an environment or places or around people who have been accountable, who have displayed accountability. So that's very uncomfortable when you are trying to talk to people, or, here you are coming into this awareness now, or coming into this a part of your journey where you're like, oh my gosh, I really have not accepted my role into why my reality is what it is, or how my life came to be. That goes back to naturally being in environments, or have grown up in environments where you're seeing so much being displayed, so much dysfunction to where your sense of security was rooted in instability. And that's all across the board. Because not only did the childhood woundings, or, affected your spiritual health, but your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. And so you're talking about healing these aspects of yourself, and then realizing how much you need to be there for you. And it's a balance. It's a healthy balance. But it can be very challenging when we haven't been in environments or places where that is supported. You're talking about being in countries or places where you're 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 more, what's the word, surveillance, or you're more monitored rather than genuine support. So consider, like, think about being in environments where you want to trust the police, or you want to have trust in your politicians or certain things, but in reality, in actuality, do you even feel safe within yourself? Do you feel secure within yourself, emotionally, mentally, physically, to even establish a relationship that starts with you first, to even believe that someone outside of you, or just somewhere in these positions, has that same interest, or has that same value, or can reciprocate that with you? So when we really all look at how things have been displayed, it's not genuine. It's not to say there aren't certain people in places, but there's no genuine support when it comes to a lot of women who are pregnant, a lot of men who, before they're incarcerated, um, because that also affects, again, how the family structure, tribal clan structure is founded, and how it flourishes and progresses. How can you have anyone progressing or prospering if they don't have peace or harmony, or let alone truth and authenticity in a home environment? These are the foundations. These are your seeds that are for longevity. That had, now we're talking about wealth. Because if I can be true to me, if I can be honest with myself and realize, like, it's something going on with me, it's something I need to go do, it's something I need help with. Conflict driven society or environments don't push the narrative of how important mental health well-being is, or having a holistic exchange with people, because again, we have been so conflicted internally with ourselves that we don't even know what a holistic relationship looks like with each other, let alone with ourselves first. We don't know what a healthy exchange, we don't know what it is to be accountable, because we naturally, again, from these environments, have been so codependent on others to fulfill us emotionally, spiritually, to fill us up with bullshit. We assume that we've been poured into, and in reality we haven't. Yeah, we've been poisoned more so with the programming, but we haven't really been nourished. We've been in relationships or created certain things with people that we assume that this was nourishing me. And that has been the programming. We've been feeding ourselves the poison of assuming like this is very beneficial. And in reality, we get to a place down the road like, wow, this is not what I assumed it to be. And that is like that reality check that hits you like, man. And then you find yourself in a place where, an uncomfortable place, but you're facing that conflict head on. You're facing that fear. You're facing that survival mode. You're facing that spiritual warfare, that generational curse head on with yourself first. And no one knows that emotional turmoil. No one knows that transitioning, how that looks. No one knows that metaphysical aspect of that caterpillar coming into a butterfly. No one knows exactly what you feel, experience, hear, you know, all those things. But again, going back to what we have experienced young, and that doubt and shame, guilt, and come up around why we shouldn't progress or feel that we're progressing or should move forward. So a lot of what I feel, even what's happening with myself, is that I'm being restored with that, restored with a sense of security within myself first. So the feeling of not feeling secure is also the divine or source removing that which has caused so much of the instability. Mm. And that reflects inward out. So seeing how that has played out, I have to realize, like, man, why do I feel this? And in reality, those of you on an energetic level that knows, like, as empaths or those who are, introverts, all these things, is that you realize that it's not no one else. A lot of it has to do with you. So their conflict that they're dealing with, whatever they're going with, has to do with them. And so that's one of the toughest things on this journey that I had to come to the self-awareness, is like giving people back their ish. Like, this is yours. I wasn't here. I wasn't in this environment when this happened. So that can be a lot of a challenge as well, because we want to naturally save people from their karma or save people from their experience of clearing that karma, or, going through that lesson, experiencing it, and then encouraging them that they're going to be completely different when they come out on the other side, just as I was. So, and then that is like you recognizing, like, who was that? What, why? And so that again is something everyone won't accept, but you. Everyone won't be accepting of the newer you. That's okay. That really doesn't matter. But the attraction from, as you deepen your relationship with yourself and continuously never to give up on yourself, never to lose yourself in the identity or the false identity of what the world or society should tell you who to be, and more so lose yourself in the idea of other people anymore. How much that will cause suffering and pain on your part. So in reality, a lot of these environments, whether you grew up in an environment, like I grew up in an environment of centering around a lot of arguing and fighting. So I realized as how much that took a toll on my mental health and on my spiritual path and healing path. I realized, I came to the self-awareness like, whoa, I cannot and I will no longer be in relationships with myself first. Because as a child, I was, from being in these environments, it's like I would get so frustrated sometimes where I was like, you see kids like hit themselves. I would get so frustrated to realizing now what I was doing, because I had no sense of guidance and direction how to navigate those emotions. I would harm myself in a way, or want to bring harm when I was a child, like, through my frustration, like punching stuff, and be like, now that I see that, it's like how much that I realized I was in environments that were driven off of the dysfunction, the fighting, to where I wanted no part in that. but I was at that moment a victim of the verbal and physical and abuse, to where in me being hurt by someone else, I carry that within myself. And then not knowing how to navigate those emotions, I would display it like through something, because I didn't know how and what else to do. So as I progressed, or grew, I realized how much my relationships reflected that, how much of the internal pain from that childhood, and how much the frustration and anger came up around now and in my previous relationship, realizing that it was never how they treated. Well, let me say this. It was the women, let's say, and I was in relationships with, that, that there was physical abuse or verbal abuse, that I can see aspects of myself where the emotional impulsiveness or the immature behavior, I can see how, and when I say immature behavior, also it's like I can see how, and emotional impulsiveness, I can see how that aspect of myself that I learned from my childhood carried on in that environment, that conflict driven environment. Felt like, well, the solution to this is conflict. There is no other solution. And I'm like, whoa, blown away. And that's the programming, to where now you are self-aware and you're realizing like, whoa, you deserve, I'm letting you know, and I deserve a relationship with myself, to realize like, I don't blame no one else. It's taking full accountability for my actions and where I am and where I'm going, and seeing how the puzzle pieces all came together, so that now my relationships are more intentional, rather in certain aspects of myself previously where I was unintentionally doing things, or have done things, or see people do things to me where there was no type of accountability, there was no type of mending, there was no type of forgiveness, acceptance, things that will help um, one feel secure within themselves again. Um, and so just coming to that self-awareness of how me no longer, you of us, we no longer neglecting those versions of ourselves. So I realized again where a lot of these certain behavior patterns stem from. Because again, we have gained through these conflict driven environments identity. Whether we want to believe it or not, we gain the identity around this to normalize and believe that this is what we should be a part of. This is what should be normalized. And that's far from the truth, or in reality, from not that's not a part of my or will not be a part of my experience. And so you deserve that vacation, or you deserve that environment where you're going to be able to be at peace, or those connections and those people who reciprocate that. And they may also look like people also going through what they have experienced too. And and that's one thing I realize is like, you can come into someone's life, and I don't take things by face value. I realize like, wow, you be surprised like what someone has went through, and then you're like, whoa, I thought I went through something. It's not a compare, it's more so like the awareness around like, wow, they got through it. And then continuing to encourage them like, you will get through it. And I'm proud of myself, I'm proud of you. And I'm also being inspired by people's how they came out of their comfort zone, how they came out of their situation. I was telling someone like, me not having the self-awareness on how hurt people, or me being hurt, and how I carry so much of that childhood trauma from that internal rage, and how through my actions how that affected so many people, and seeing how those two who have went through that, who don't know where it comes from, don't know where this anger, these emotions come from, and how it's connected to what they've experienced in their childhood, and trying to make sense and trying to navigate it and trying to process it, it could be a challenge. It can be something again where you feel mom or dad or someone should have guided you through or helped. Then you're left with yourself and trying now to reestablish and trying to unlearn and relearn this process of being um, who you truly are, and allowing those people and places to fall away and you stepping into your power and regaining that sense of confidence and building a foundation or empire upon those very things that are valuable to you. You know, because if people value conflict and you value peace and harmony, that cannot, obviously we know that that's not going to resonate. So now a lot of us are in that position, or will come into that place where you will get through what you're getting through. And there are others out there that will relate and um, embrace, accept, and reciprocate that which you value. And that's what I realize is like your self-worth, your self-value has a lot to do with really an internal thing rather than just external. I mean, it plays hand in hand, like the spiritual and physical, but it's more so like what we have experienced to assume that this is normal or what has been normalized. So I gotta get on about my day, but I appreciate you all. Again, it's just to be able to talk about a lot of this and to show up again. A lot of things I have to access with myself to be able to share with you all. But just know that you're going to get through it. We all are different stages, phases, um, different realities in our life, and we're all valuable. We all are a part of this oneness or grand scheme of things, and we're all returning home to source, or home to love. And that's a part of what I realized on my journey. Is like part of returning back home to myself, which I agreed on, no matter who is in my life or not, is that, and a part of never giving up on myself again is a part of accepting that others didn't give up on me. When I was in certain things where I didn't have that self-awareness, I realized that I would no longer give up on myself. And those versions of myself, whether past and present, are a part of me accepting that this is too a part of who I am and how I came to be. So just know that you can grant yourself security to feel safe. Grant yourself that grace to step out your comfort zone, to really show up for yourself. The world, it's not so much, we hear the world needs you, but you need you. So you can show up in a world that will someday will reciprocate, need you in a sense. So that's one thing again that I too have had to accept, is that to decipher what is really genuine support and what is really those who just want to monitor. But it's none of that. Again, just it's a healthy balance to where I realize that it's okay to grant yourself um, the door out, and it's okay to shut that door, never to look back, only to walk into another door or walk into another environment, um, and or you know where you are appreciated and received and celebrated. But you got to celebrate you. Remember that you got to honor. This is going back to value. Yeah, we were a part of a lot of things that wasn't the best. But now that pain could be a part of your gain. You gaining these new relationships and foundations and environments and home and environments that reciprocate your value. So you got to ask yourself, what do you really value internally? And that'll reflect what you're experiencing. Peace and blessings. Shalom.